Hello, Ian here from Dark Blades Workshop. Welcome back to another video. This is the first part of the display board tutorial. Okay, so the display board for Batman miniature games. I've been working on this on and off for a couple of years in different guises, trying out different techniques and methods, different widths of MDF. So now we're working on a 12mm MDF board, and I think I've got the right width now. So yeah, happy with that at least. So this takes you from start to finish, starting off with a bare MDF board and building up with card, plaster, oil painting and weathering. And we're going to do some more tutorials in the future with more scattered terrain like skips, cop cars, graffiti. It's going to be cool. So this is the first part of the board build. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Okay, here's the tutorial on how we do the boards for the Batman miniature game. This is just like a demo section that I'm going to be using for photos and stuff like that. But it's exactly the same process as the ones that are used for the larger 4-foot by 4-foot board. Starts off life as a sheet of MDF from B&Q, which is my local hardware store, 12mm thick, and it comes in sheets of 4-foot by 2-foot. So I've used 2 of them for my larger board, and working on other projects as well, I've ended up with this little bit of offcut, so I decided to do a little side project and do a full tutorial on it as well. The first thing you've got to do is think about the layout of the board, where your roads are going to go, where the buildings are going to go. So I'm going to stick with the building as it's situated here, and I'm going to do a road coming this way with a junction and going down that way as well. So we'll have a nice bit of road section to show off, and a paved area around the building. So the first thing I do is to mark out where the roads are going to go. So I wanted a little strip of pavement here, so I thought 1 row of paving stones should be enough. So on my big board I did that 1 row of paving worked out to be about 25 mils. So I'll mark it off at the top and up this end as well. So that's the pavement in place, and my pen doesn't work. It's a good start, Ian. Well done. Alright, so 1 strip of paving. The roads work out about 15 mil, so you got 75 mil per side of the road, so it works out as 15. So that will be the next marker there and there. I was thinking about I might be running out of room here for the building. So I'm going to have a junction here, so the road will be coming down this way, so I need to measure in another 15 mil. So I'll just mark it off of this road. There. do a little curve there. So that's the road sections marked out. Next thing I'll need to do is to mark out the footplate of the building. So I'll just make sure it's sitting square in the space that we've got, and just mark. Not having much luck with this pencil. Just want to get a general idea. So there we are. That's the basic layout of the board done. So next up is to mask off the area that we're about to cover with textured paint. So I'll line that pretty much up against the line of the road. It's about a couple of mil outside of it. But then I'll mark it, or I'll use masking tape to run along that line, but then secure the paper in place as well. And along this side of the road as well. So I've got it half the width on the paper. So I'll carry on with the rest of that. Okay, so that's everything masked off. I've got that little bend on the junction there. So it's all ready to go out to the garage now and give it a blast with some textured paint. Okay, the textured paint that I'm going to use is this stuff by Rust-Oleum. Black granite. It doesn't have to be black granite, it's just all about the texture. I got this from, again, B&Q. So it's just a case of applying it to the board now. I'm going to try and put some kind of protection underneath the board though, because it gets everywhere. Okay, so I've got a bit of cardboard for protection now because as I say, it does go everywhere. And just try and get an even coverage. You can see I'm holding it at least, I don't know, 15 inches away from the board. Because if you get too close, it just pushes all the texture off the board. If you didn't want to mess about with this stuff, I've seen people do roads with... I'm concentrating on this bit now. I've seen roads done with sandpaper that you buy in belts or on rolls. And you can get them in different widths. I think, yeah, it's for a belt sander maybe. So I'm just trying to build up the texture now. So I'd say about two passes and I think we've got a decent coverage there. The only thing now is you've got to leave this overnight to dry because it takes ages. Right, so the texture paint is nice and dry now. Got a lovely rough surface, and I'm going to remove the masking tape. And the next stage will be making the outline of the building here. Okay, so I've drawn around the outline of the building to make a template, and the next thing I did was to cut some strips of card. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go around the outside of the template of the building and build up a border, and it will be the same for any outside edge of the board that isn't actually road surface. So I need to go around this part and then up the top here as well. So when I'm doing card around the borders, what I tend to do, instead of measuring each section, what I do is line it up and cut out the bits that I need. Because we've got two recesses along the building, what I'll do, I'll just size it up and cut it. So that'll fit in there, that'll fit there, that'll fit there, and one on the end. And the trick is not to glue it too close to the building, just give it a tiny gap, just to allow for a little bit of error. I mean, I've glued that one in. So what I'll do, I'll glue that one into position, and then I'll test the fit and make sure I've got enough of a gap here, just a little bit of a gap. So it'll allow for a little bit of movement, because when we plaster it after, it might just go over the edge of the card, you see. So I'll leave a little bit of gap just for error. And I'll also cut the edge strips to size as well. And I'll carry on with gluing these in position. I'll come back when I'm finished. So I've glued one side into position, so I'll make sure that fits in there, and then I'll start gluing on this side now. Let's do these couple of strips very quickly. Just normal super glue. Just remember to keep a little bit of a gap there. And I'll just lift it out of position just in case the glue seeps underneath the building and glues the building into place. So I'll wait for that one to dry before I do the rest of the strips, and just carry on like that around the building. Alright, that's the card border done all the way around the board, and the building fits within that quite nicely, nice and snug. Still got a little bit of a gap, so that's good. Next stage is foam. So, Funky Foam used to be called Fun Foam. I don't know why they changed the name. It's only a couple of mil thick, and it's quite soft, and it's easy to cut as well. Just one stroke with a craft knife should do it. So I'll remove the paper and the staples for this end, because I'll need that long edge for that section of pavement at the top of the board. So I'll just move the board around there, and what I'll do is mark off, if I can find a pen, mark off at the top there. And about the about there. So all I'll do is just cut a strip. It should fit in. Let's grab a ruler. As I said, it's really easy to cut, easy to work with. That just fits in there nicely. The idea of the foam, I'll just show you, I've gone over there slightly, so it's just a little trim there. The idea of the foam is once you put the plaster of Paris over the top, it's not going to be a thick coat plaster of Paris, it's going to be quite thin, but when you press down, when the plaster of Paris is dry, when you press down, you get really cool cracks in the pavement, so that's what we're after. So I'll fill this part in, and we'll come back when I've finished that for the next stage. Right, the foam is cut to size now, and it's just a case of gluing it down. For this I use Canopy glue. It's a fast drying PVA, and fast, I'm talking about half an hour, and it's pretty much dry. So let's put a layer down. Let's lay around the edge of the board and around each border, and just a little bit in the middle. You can get this stuff off eBay. It's only a few quid. I would recommend it because it's really good. Okay, that should do it. It's just a case of getting the foam in place. And put some weights down on it to keep it in place until it dries. So we can use pots of paint, something similar, and we'll be ready for the next stage. Right, onto the plaster stage. This is my preferred stuff. I don't like buying the ready mixed filler that you can get, because for some reason it shrinks and then it cracks. So stick with the powdered version. I've added water. I've got a semi-stodgy state, which I'm relatively happy with. And I always use a scalpel knife or a palette knife that you can get from art shops. It's just a case of slopping it on. You do one section at a time, and then using your palette knife then to smooth it out to try and get a nice even coverage. So you want to fill the gap between the foam and the card first of all, and then put a light layer over the top of the card. Don't
don't worry if you go over the gap, you know, into the area of where the building is, because you can scrape that away afterwards. So it doesn't take long to get a nice smooth finish. And don't worry about leaving it rough, because I'm going to be sanding it down afterwards. As long as you cover the card as well, because we're going to be scribing or scoring into the plaster after this. And you need a little bit of depth over the card as well. So I'll carry on and do the rest of the area, and then we'll be ready for the next stage. Just a quick shot to show you how rough it is, and that you don't need to worry about getting it perfectly smooth. As I said, we're going to be sanding it, so it's just a case of waiting for this to dry now, and then it's out to the garage again. Okay, so I've sanded down the plaster. I don't normally prime straight after that, but I thought it'd be easier to show you the scribing stage. So I gave it a light prime, and then the next thing I'm going to do is to measure out the pattern of the paving. So I'm using 30mm squares for each slab. So it's just a case of starting at the edge, marking off every 30mm. And do the same this end. And then joining up the lines across the way, and then stagger them going across. So I'll join them up first. So we have 30mm gaps, and now we need 30mm across the way. So the top line I'll mark off there, and 30mm intervals. On the second line, you want to start off, measure 15mm, and then 30mm intervals. And then you do the same for the bottom. So 30mm intervals, measure in 15, and then 30mm intervals, and then just stagger them. So I've started marking off the slabs. So as long as you've got a mark at the top and at the bottom, you can line it up. And just keep going until you're done. So the next stage is to start scoring out the lines, and I use this dental tool. It's not sharp, in fact it's quite blunt, but I don't even use the sharper bit, I use the very, very blunt end of it. And it's just a case of going over the lines. And scoring out the groove. Until you finish. I used to think it was quite tedious, but I think it's starting to get a bit therapeutic because I've done so many boards. All with Harry Potter and 4-foot Batman board. So we'll carry on with this. And we'll come back when I'm ready to prime. So I'm ready for the prime, but what I like to do is to add cracks to the pavements. So I'm using the point of the scalpel, but it's upside down. I'll just put cracks here and there. Let's get a bit of character going. Take chips out of it as well. Take off corners and things like that. Just a bit more character. And just carry on until you're happy. That's all the cracks done, so make sure you get all the dust and the particles out. And ready for the garage for the prime now. Okay, so I've given it a good couple of coats with grey primer now. I've done the road as well. And now I've got white. I'm just going to create a little bit of variation in tone on the paving slabs. And this will become more apparent when we go into the oil stage. Let's go a little bit closer there. Right. I think that'll do actually. That's pretty good. I don't do any variation on the road because it's going to be dry brushed anyway, and then we'll be doing pigments on that later on anyway. So that's it for now.